There's also this piece on Polygon about Eternals. I watched the Eternals. I went and saw the Eternals on Sunday, and you know what? I was a little surprised, honestly. Like, I'm a bit surprised that if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, you'll see that like the audience score is like at an 80, and the critic score is around 49 or 48%. So the critics think it's rotten, but the fans seem to enjoy it. And I'm a little surprised by that. Like, given the nature and the tone of the movie, I would have figured that it would have been a situation where, like, the fans would have thought that it was rotten, and the critics would have thought that it was pretty decent. But that's not how it turned out to be, which is really kind of weird. I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it did some really neat things. It was definitely not a normal style Marvel movie. It was trying to do something different. A lot of people have likened it to like a Zack Snyder type movie, which I understand. I get that. Some people feel a certain way about Zack Snyder type movies. I can take him or leave him, but you know, I appreciate what he tries to do. I appreciate the vision. He has a very good sense of visual aesthetic, and even if you don't like his particular aesthetic, like he has a really good eye for cinematography and all that kind of stuff. I did get that sense from Eternals when I watched it. Like, oh, I feel like the kind of sense that Zack Snyder was going for when he was doing his version, the Snyder cut of Justice League, where he was intent on portraying these superheroes, these metahumans, as being like godlike creatures, and their struggles being on like a cosmic level. The Eternals kind of goes that same route. It portrays the Eternals as like godlike creatures that are on this sort of this divine path, and it was pretty interesting to see. I enjoyed the movie. I kind of side with the 80% on Rotten Tomatoes that likes it. Not so much. I don't get why the critics didn't like it as much, though, because they spend a lot of their time deriding Marvel movies, talking about how they're super formulaic and superhero stuff is blah 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 blah. But this was a movie that The Eternals was a movie that was very philosophical. It was a lot more philosophical than you know, than like Iron Man or something like that. It was very philosophical. It had a format that was more drama driven than it was like, okay, we got to hit our action beats here, here, and here. I mean, there was still that, but it was almost secondary to like the character drama. And maybe that's what drove people towards, or drove critics rather, towards not liking it. Which is why I would have thought that it would have driven the fans towards not liking it. It's a character drama based around characters that people aren't familiar with. And it was an ensemble movie that does it. So when you have something like the Avengers, you at least had a Iron Man and an Iron Man 2 and a Captain America the First Avenger, a Thor, and an Incredible Hulk movie. All of those movies combined introduced those characters to you. It gave you a arc for those characters to follow. It developed those characters to a certain extent in each of those movies. And by the time you got to your ensemble movie in Avengers, you understood the characters, you knew their motivations, you knew their personalities, and all that sort of stuff. The movie didn't need to spend any time trying to get you to... It didn't have to spend any time introducing the characters to you and trying to get you to like them and all that sort of stuff, and trying to introduce some level of stakes for them. It comes baked into the characters by the virtue of those movies having existed before. And Eternals doesn't have that ability. This is the movie that introduces all those characters, so it had the unenviable task of kind of like the same way that Justice League did when the Joss Whedon version of Justice League. It had to introduce all of these characters that you weren't really familiar with, and it had to, at the same time, it had to get you to be invested in those characters. It had to get you to it has to get you to feel some level of stakes for their plight. I think that's an area where Joss Whedon's Justice League faltered. And I can understand if people would say that the Eternals faltered in that regard too. I'm not going to take it to the hilt defending that movie for that reason. It introduced several characters and they all just had a limited amount of time to kind of ingratiate themselves with it. Like I said, it doesn't focus on we have to hit this action beat, this action beat, this action beat. So there was a lot of breath given to developing a few of those characters, Icarus and Cersei in particular, and Gilgamesh as well. There were some good moments, and I like the characters. At the end of the movie, and I also say this in defense of that movie, it's a movie about a bunch of people that you really don't know or give a shit about. Like, yeah, that's every movie, literally. Like, there is rarely a movie that you go into, whether it's like, you know, The Irishman, or if it's, you know, the first John Wick before you knew what John Wick even was. Or let's say, oh man, I'm struggling for movies. Malignant. Like, you don't know anything about any of the characters in those movies when you go in. So you're always, like, whenever you go watch a movie, 90% of the time you're watching a movie about characters you don't know and don't really give a shit about initially. And the onus is on the movie, it's on the writer, to make you care about those characters, to make you give a shit, to give you investment on those characters. And if you don't by the end of the movie, then that's a failure on that writer's part, or the director's part, or the actor's part. It's a team effort. So every movie has that challenge. It's not something that's just unique to like ensemble superhero movies. Like, every movie has that challenge. And in my opinion, I think that it's tough for ensemble movies to do it more so than normal movies, because a normal movie you have 2-3 characters that really require development over the course of an hour and a half, 2 hours. But an ensemble movie, especially like this, you've got like 6 characters, right? You have Druig, you have Kingo, you have Sprite, you have Icarus, you have Cersei, you have Gilgamesh, and then you have that speedster girl. I forget her name. I don't know why I always forget her name. You have the speedster, and then you have Dane. Oh man, I forget his name. I know the character. I just forget his Dane Whitman. You have that guy too, who pops in a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end. So you have these characters. You have like 8 of them at least that, you know, you have to establish some kind of foundation for. Enough of a foundation to get viewers to actually like them. Maybe not even necessarily care for them, but to at least like them, right? That's a tough thing to do. I think Eternals did it probably the best you possibly could do for a first-time movie. I came away from that movie understanding. I sympathized with Sprite's dilemma, and I sympathized with that character. I liked Kingo and his servant, his little man servant. I liked, and I even understood. Maybe I didn't sympathize, but I understood where Icarus was coming from. I don't really want to spoil anything right now. I will spoil probably in 10 minutes, but I understood where Icarus was coming from. I understood that character. I sympathized with it. And Cersei too, like, you know, and Druig. I understood that character as well. I think Druig was probably the most developed character, honestly. And I think that actor, I forget his name, he did an amazing job portraying that role. And at the end of the movie, when all the twists have occurred and everything's leading up to its crescendo, I didn't feel the stakes that you would feel if you were watching characters that you'd seen over the course of years and then, you know, were developed and whatnot. I didn't quite feel that, but I did enjoy the moment. I think what probably kept me anchored to the moment, oddly enough, were the stakes of the situation that was happening. So, like, because it was visually awesome. and this is a spoiler alert for those that haven't seen the Eternals yet. Um, when that Eternal's hand starts coming up out of the ocean, like that was visually awesome. That was one of the most wicked things I've seen in a long time. And on top of that, it just looked really cool. It looked really cool. And and I knew that, the planet wasn't going to get destroyed or anything. You kind of know how that's going to end, unfortunately. And if Justin were here, he would have a thing to say about movies that, is it a real movie? Is it cinema, or is it just a flick? Based on if you can predict what happens at the end and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, okay, that's an argument you can make, and that's not one I'm going to fight too hard against. But it gave me a cool moment. It was a cool moment to see. It was cool to watch them fight each other. It was cool to see that happening and the stakes involved with that. And the denouement was cool too, visually and like narratively. So I didn't mind the movie. I thought I ended the movie liking the characters. Maybe not entirely invested in their plight, just because it's still weird. Their dilemma is weird. Their plight is weird, and it's not rooted in the MCU that we know. It takes place on the same Earth, in the same realm, but it's not rooted in the MCU that we know. These guys just essentially came out of nowhere and are having their own cosmic kind of dilemma, and because of that, it's a little like we spent 22, 23 movies and however many Disney Plus series being invested in a core group of characters and their cosmic dilemma, their cosmic and earthly dilemma, being asked to do the same for these types of people and these Eternals, and having the movie end to a point where it's only really escalating into even further shit that we don't get. Like the post-credit scene introduces two characters that, just add even more weirdness to the entire occasion. And, the post-credit scene, gives you a glimpse of what Dane Whitman's all about too. So that's another third. It's a lot to ask for. I get it. It's a lot to ask for people. It's kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy in that regard. But Guardians pared it down. Like, you had 5 people. You had Star-Lord, Gamora, you had Drax, Rocket Raccoon, and Groot. You just had 5, And at the end of the movie, you still just had 5. So it was a little different with Guardians. It was smaller, it was scaled down a little bit more. It was a story that was rooted in something a little familiar for us because Star-Lord is a human from Earth. He's kind of got this weird sort of orphan kid kind of story that he's floating through. His attachment to Earth and pop culture that we're all familiar with keeps the things that we're familiar with rooted in that story. And it doesn't ever really expand too wildly beyond that until Guardians Volume 2. And with Guardians Volume 2, we're familiar with all the characters. We have some level of investment in them and whatnot. And it's easier to do that because it's just 5 and not like 7. So in that regard, Guardians kind of does it a little bit better. But I still think that Eternals was a pretty good movie. I still think that it accomplished its goal. Maybe they could have pared down the amount of Eternals a bit. I don't know who you would cut. I don't know who you would cut to kind of do that, but I thought it was a good movie. I side with the 80% on Rotten Tomatoes that enjoyed that movie. Let's see. I'm going to start with this article on Polygon just because I've got questions and I want to see if they answer them. Our biggest questions after Eternals, and a few key answers. What's the real reason the Eternals didn't fight Thanos? Can Eternals reincarnate? Why isn't Star Fox huge and purple? Now, can Eternals reincarnate? I know that in the comics, and I have read the Neil Gaiman, John Romita Jr. run of the Eternals, and it seems to answer that question at least. Actually, I read some of the old Kirby ones too. It seems to answer that question at least. Like, it seems like the Eternals have some capacity for reincarnation. I think in that particular run, early on, Icarus gets wiped, and then he ends up getting regenerated and brought back to life. So there is some level of reincarnation that's available to them. With so many new characters and new concepts introduced with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Eternals, it's no surprise that we ended up with a lot of questions, especially in cases where the movie takes a light touch with story elements the comic covered in much more detail and depth. Some of the big questions Eternals left us with get answered in the comics, but it isn't clear whether the answers are the same in the MCU. Other questions may not have answers. Some are big, important issues. Others might just seem silly. We even pitched a few questions to the Eternal screenwriters for the insider gut check. Whatever the case, here's what we walked away from the theater wondering, along with what we were able to find out as we tried to answer our questions. Editorial note: major spoilers ahead for Eternals. Why isn't Star Fox a huge purple guy? Okay, Star Fox at the end in the post-credits was introduced. Eternals mid-credits scene pops up a couple of new characters in the MCU, including Thanos' brother Star Fox, aka Eros, who is played by Harry Styles, notably not covered in CGI prosthetics or purple makeup. If Thanos and Star Fox are brothers, and Thanos is an Eternal like all the other completely human-looking Eternals, why is Thanos a giant purple dude who looks like he comes from a completely different species? Good question. Turns out this one has canon explanation coming out of Eternals lore. Thanos has a recessive gene from the shape-changing monsters called deviants, which gives him deviant syndrome, a birth condition that makes him look different from most Eternals. Also, he and Eros are Eternals by birth. Both of their parents were Eternals, but they were personally created by a Celestial and assigned to a planet to shepherd a baby Celestial into being, like the main characters in Eternals. There's even an MCU hook into this comics canon background. In Avengers Infinity War, Red Skull greets Thanos as son of all ours, acknowledging his eternal dad. And it's worth remembering that Thanos is known as the Mad Titan because he was born on Saturn's moon Titan, not because he's a big fella or because Titans are some class of beings like Eternals. Okay. So Thanos is an Eternal. He is a mutated one. Deviant syndrome. Both of his parents were Eternals. So he is the product of the Celestials. Those sons of bitches. You know, you would think. So here's something. Thanos is a product of the Eternals. Or of the Celestials, essentially. The Celestials appear to require life form in order to birth new Celestials. That was the main purpose of creating the Eternals, so that the Eternals could kill the Deviants and allow life to usher unimpeded on a planet, so that that life can then feed energy into the embryonic Celestial, so that the Celestial could then be birthed from the planet in its ultimate destruction. So we understand that much. If Thanos ends up running around the galaxy collecting Infinity Stones for the purposes of wiping out half of the universe's population, you would imagine that wiping out half of the universe's populations would put a pretty big crimp on the Celestials' plans to use that life force to birth new Celestials. And they even mentioned that. They mentioned in that movie that when Thanos snapped away half of life's existence, that it delayed Tiamat. Tiamat is the name of the Celestial in the center of the Earth. It delayed Tiamat's birth. So if this was Thanos' agenda and he's gallivanting about the galaxy efforting to do this, never mind why didn't the Eternals stop Thanos from accomplishing this. Why didn't the Celestials find Thanos and stop him? Like, wiping away half of the universe's life forms. It doesn't just put a crimp in birthing Tiamat from Earth. It puts a crimp in birthing all Celestials that might be out there waiting to be given life. Like, that's a huge deal. You would think that, like, the other Celestials that are out there would be like, hey, this Thanos guy is he's about to really wreck shop on our operation here. We should band together and stop him. And this I forget the name of the Eternal in or the Celestial in the Eternals, but I mean he popped up at Earth at record speeds. He just popped up at the very end and was like, hey, fuck y'all, you're coming with me. And then he disappears. You would have think that he would have popped up around Earth the same time that Thanos was grabbing those stones, or he would have popped up at nowhere or anywhere. Any of the Celestials that were around should have stopped Thanos from snapping away half of the galaxies or half of the universe's life forms. If they had such an extreme interest in birthing these Celestials the way they seem to. What's the real reason the Eternals didn't fight Thanos? Like so many other franchise films that have to be worked into existing continuities, Marvel Studios' Eternals has some logistical problems to navigate. The 10 immortal warriors known as the Eternals have been on Earth for millennia to fight deviants, but after they supposedly wiped out all their adversaries, they stood down, split up, and then apparently mostly didn't do much up to the present day, which is odd since their mandate from their big red robot Arishem, that's his name, Arishem, is to protect humanity and the planet. No, to protect humanity and planet from deviants. It wasn't as broad as to protect humanity and the planet. It was specifically to protect humanity and the planet from deviants. Which is also kind of, it introduces a conundrum. So, if their mandate is to protect humanity and Earth from deviants, and we know that Thanos has a deviant syndrome, he has a recessive gene from the shape-changing monsters called deviants, which gives him deviant syndrome, then you would think that the Eternals, who were put on Earth to protect humanity and the planet from deviants, would have been activated to fight off Thanos at that moment. But I don't know, maybe the deviant syndrome isn't enough to trigger their little radar there. You would think, and you'd think that the ways humanity and the planet keep getting threatened by aliens, supervillains, yeah, they're not there to protect from everything, just deviants. The real problem here is Thanos coming to Earth, seeking the Infinity Stones in Avengers Infinity War, and eventually wiping out half the universe. And then, once the Avengers bring everyone back in Avengers Endgame, Thanos tries to do it again. In Eternals, perfectly ordinary Earth boyfriend and future superhero, if the MCU has its way, Dan Whitman asks his eternal girlfriend, Cersei, why the Eternals didn't fight Thanos, and she tosses off a casual, oh, we're not supposed to intervene in human affairs. But this makes no damn sense whatsoever, since Thanos' plot didn't end at human affairs, it affected the whole universe. They're not there to protect the universe. And the Eternals' secret agenda is to help humanity be fruitful and multiply so their mass numbers can fuel the birth of a baby celestial. Half of humanity spontaneously dying is the immense setback to their plan. Again, okay, so spoilers alert, the Eternals don't know that their plan is to protect humans so that they can multiply fruitfully and birth a new celestial. They don't know that. All they know is that they were put on this earth to protect humanity from the deviants. That's it. They need, and they explained this in the movie. Like, it seems like this guy didn't watch the movie. They explained it that, like, they need for humans to have setbacks because those setbacks spawn innovation. Those innovations help eventually foster on more procreation. Like, the wars that create technologies and these technologies or medical advancements increase life expectancy. They increase procreation rates, and as that happens, there are more and more people. There are less and less wars that wipe out millions of people, like World War II, where untold millions of people were killed from that, mostly Russians. Eliminating that sort of thing, allows for humanity to multiply tenfold. and then that's what births the Celestial. But they didn't know about the birthing the Celestial part. That was a big revelation for them. As far as the way that you should look at it is like they're robots. The Eternals are basically just robots who are programmed to, quote, protect humanity from deviants, end quote. That's it. Not protect humanity from all threats, not protect humanity from being wiped out from extinction. Very, very narrow, protect humanity from deviants. And they adhere to that. That's why they disappeared for a while. Once they believed that they destroyed the last deviant, they disappeared into the shadows, like never to be seen, until a deviant popped up again, and then they all came back out. So that's what their mission statement was. Besides which, they violate that rule frequently, the Turtles, for far pettier reasons than preserving half of humanity. Reasons like, but technology is cool, and but rules are dumb. The obvious answer, unfortunately, is the Eternals weren't part of the story yet when Infinity War and Endgame were made. But that just gives screenwriters more responsibility to come up with more possible. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. This just seems like some shitty fan bitching. I think the actual answer is that there are a lot of instances in the past, and they explained this in the movie, like, there's a struggle within the Eternals where some want to be more interventionist in human evolution and the way human society operates. And there's some that don't, that they're all about, like, let's not get involved. Even to the point where Druig eventually is like, well, fuck y'all, I'm just going to take this shit over. This is dumb. And they eventually just let him do it, And there are a lot of instances where an Eternal could have evolved in human plight. Like, they could have stopped World War II. They could have stopped, any sort of... There's a lot of conflicts in human history. There's 7 Eternals and more than 7 conflicts in human history. There's a lot that they could have done to stop them, but that was never their mission statement. And at a certain point, it was never their philosophical, it was never their philosophical mantra. Even Druig, like, he basically stopped the massacre that he was witnessing, but he just retreated to the woods with his dudes and, like, lived a happy life, happy existence for however many years just doing that. Like, it was never, I guess, never felt it his responsibility to save the whole of humanity, even though, like, there was pontificating on that philosophical notion. He just kind of kept it. He respected Icarus and Arishem, I guess, their will to not interfere with him, with people, with humans, with humanity. He respected that to a limit. Like, he took it to that limit, and then he kept it right there. He kept it to a point where he could control and maintain what he wanted to, which was the violence he was witnessing there in Mexico, and left it there so that he wouldn't be, interfered with by Arishem or Icarus or Circe or whatever the other one's name was. I forget her name. The one that died. So, yeah, like, it was never really, well, why didn't they? I mean, you could ask that question for anyone. Why didn't Thor stop? Blah, 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 blah. Well, it was like, they have their own little stories that they're adhering to. And it's not, like, for starters, a lot of this is just like having a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Eternals' mission statement was. They weren't there to protect humanity. They were there to protect humanity from deviants. And that's it. Just the deviants part. That was all that they were there for. So that, unfortunately, leaves humanity wide open to every threat that's not a deviant. It turns out that's a lot. It's other humans. It's in addition to, creatures like Thanos. Now, again, I think that there's a little bit of a wiggle room there. You could be a lawyer about, well, Thanos has a deviant gene. Why weren't they reactivated to that? Fair point. But I think that this other quibbling is a little bit. This is nerd shit. This is edgelordy nerd shit, like dumb nerd shit, gatekeeping nerd shit almost. Like this is what the comic book guy from The Simpsons would be snorting about. I don't think it's very relevant. What happened to the Eternals during the blip? Statistically, given Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet-fueled scheme, 5 of the 10 Eternals, well, there are 10 of them? Icarus, Kingo, Gilgamesh, Thena, Druig, why do I just have those 5? I named 7 last time. There was the Speed Girl, I forget her name. The leader who died eventually, and Ina, Bingo. I missed one of them earlier. The one that died. I have 8. Over the last the inventor guy, I forget his name, the black dude, the inventor guy. Who's the last guy I'm missing now? I don't know who the last guy I'm missing is. 10 of them, huh? Oh, Sprite, of course, Sprite. Yeah, there were 10 of them, Sprite. Wow, you see 10 characters that you gotta like build some level of care for over the course of like 2 hours. That's a tough task, man. I forgot about a couple of those guys. That's a tough task. That's a tall order, you know? And I liked the black dude. I liked his character. I liked his personality. I liked his arc even. He had a little bit of like a mini arc. I liked that, you know. He was a cool dude, but I completely forgot about him because there were a lot of characters. So 5 of the 10 Turtles would have turned to dust during the blip, which should have made a pretty lasting impression on the other 5, given how close they all are. I mean, they aren't that close. They were all spread to the wind. They had been for centuries. Maybe even millennia. I forget when the last time they were all together. And how profoundly accustomed they are to losing each other. You can gloss over this one by noting that most of them were scattered around the globe, so maybe half of them dusted and the other half didn't know about it. But it's surprising that a worldwide cataclysm wouldn't have moved them to check up on one another. A 5-year period where half or more of them might have been dead might have been a little important. That's a fair point. Why did Cersei hide her Eternal's identity from Dane? Dude, what the fuck? What kind of dumb question is that? I don't even want to read that. That's a really dumb question. How does Cersei feel about Icarus? One of the Eternal's outer aspect is setting up a standard love triangle around Cersei without ever spending much time on how she feels about either of the men yearning for her. Yeah, this is from the point of view of a female director, I feel like. You have a situation where the dudes are kind of used as love interests the way that women are towards male love interest in normal movies, where you're never asked if what the man feels about 2 female love interests in any given movie. It's just kind of accepted that you know, he's gonna bag one of them, right? So I feel like this is just putting that on its head. Like, one of Eternal's outer aspects. When the movie begins, she's been estranged from her Eternal's lover, Icarus, for a long time and has been dating Dane long enough that he wants to move in together. But in a brief scene where he's kissing her and trying to broach the topic, she dodges the kiss and then discusses as if they're inconveniences. The movie barely suggests she has any feelings for him at all. That's not what that is. Who wrote this, dude? Does this person watch movies ever? Tasha Robinson? Dude, you gotta watch more movies, Tasha. Read some books. When Icarus returns, Cersei seems shocked he's even alive. But while he at least shows some minor hope that she'll break up with Dane, he never meaningfully discusses their relationship with her, and she never shows any anger over him. You know that she does just show anger. That was like a whole thing. Like, why did you leave me? Like, that was a whole thing. There's no sense of chemistry or passion between them. Well, that's probably an actor thing more than anything. Yeah, they were kind of. I think it's kind of tough, like trying to portray what it is to be an eternal, like a basically a robot godling, while at the same time trying to portray a sense of chemistry and passion, especially when you're given a character like Icarus. That may have been a tall task to order, even for a great actor like Richard Madden. May have been a little bit too tall a task to order for him there. I didn't get the sense that there was a great deal of chemistry there. I definitely felt like there was more chemistry between Cersei and Dane, but the movie did try to inject chemistry with a lot of those more passionate and sensual scenes. I guess whether that succeeded or not is up to the viewer. This person, Tasha, apparently it wasn't enough, and in my view, I don't think it was enough either. I completely agree that there didn't seem to be a great deal of chemistry between them, but maybe somebody else feels different. And when she and Dane are together again at the end of the movie, there's similarly zero sense of feeling. I don't quite get that vibe. I think there's more chemistry between her and Dane than her and Icarus. It's a part of it again is we're used to male characters being aloof and mysterious, right? So we understand that and accept that as being a male trait when there are two women that are vying for the love and affection of the male character. But when it's a woman character that has that same kind of thing, I think that the read on that is, oh, she has no feelings for him. Like, women have to be more emotive. They have to be more passionate and lustful or whatever the case may be. I think that the character is prohibiting or exhibiting that same sense of mystery and aloofness and reclusiveness even. Because she's a god, basically, or maybe a godling, a demigod. Godbot. She's a godbot. And she understands what it means to be immortal, to be eternal, and to live a life that is, elevated beyond that of a normal human being. And, she has this human being that's following around like a puppy. What is she supposed to do about that? So, sometimes the context is important in these things. Why is all this set up and then left to lie limply on the sidewalk like a worm after a rainstorm? What? What do you mean lie limply on the sidewalk? She was sucked into the sky. Like, it was obviously... So, for those that don't know, Dane Whitman is a character in the Marvel Universe known as the Black Knight. It was obviously set up that the Black Knight is about to engage in some kind of a swashbuckling adventure to try to rescue Cersei. Like, that's what that was all about. It was very much, it was like the intro. The denouement of the Eternals was like the intro of the NES game Double Dragons. where those gangsters shuffle up to the woman and punch her in the stomach and then fling her over their shoulders and shuffle off. And then Billy or Jimmy Lee have to engage on an 8-level quest of ass kicking to get her back. Like, that's kind of the vibe I got from that. Like, not that there was any sense of feeling at all or anything like that, but that, it ended up setting up for, like, okay, now we're about to get into what Dane Whitman's character is all about. Did Icarus actually die? Again, like, this is something that the movie, I guess, is yet to determine. But in the comics, the Eternals just kind of regenerate in a weird little robot lab deep under the earth. I forget what exactly it is. Let's see. It's hard to believe. Yeah, I mean, there's a spoiler right on the screen. I'm sorry about that if you just popped in and didn't want that spoiled for you. It's hard to believe any superhero is dead unless you see a body, and it's hard to see a body when somebody vaporizes themselves in the sun. But given that the only Eternals who definitely die in the film only die after having their cosmic powers drained out of them, and given to the Eternals' capacity for easily shrugging off attacks that would turn mortals into a thin layer of pink jam, It isn't all that clear that Icarus did manage to immolate himself. In a recent conversation with Eternal screenwriters and cousins Kaz and Ryan Firpo, Polygon asked what it would actually take to kill Icarus. What is the melting point of an Eternal, the core of the sun? Maybe he found it or maybe he didn't. Yeah, in the sequel, we'll cut back to him and he's just going to be stuck there going, damn it. Icarus does die, doesn't matter. Will he be brought back? I don't think that really is worth going into. How the heck does Mad Weary work? It's a good question. The disease afflicting Thena's mind doesn't get much explained in Eternals. It's mostly there for extra drama as she loses control, attacks her compatriots at the worst possible times. The vague summary in both the comics and the films that it's a psychological syndrome caused by centuries of life, which a human-like mind wasn't designed to absorb. The buildup of too many memories and too much knowledge over time damages Eternal psyches, so they lose track of which era they're in and what their identity and what they're currently holding. But the more obvious symptom of the disease of that description would be for someone with the disease, actually spelled Madwari, to suddenly start speaking Mesopotamian or attacking buses because they look like looming monsters. Instead, whenever Athena is claimed by the Weary, as Icarus says in the original Marvel comics, her eyes fill with cosmic energy, she mutters venerations of we're all going to die, and she tries to kill the other Eternals exclusively. In this version of the story, Mad Worry winds up looking more like a cosmic anxiety attack about the impending destruction of the Eternals' latest planetary home, as if Athena has been alive long enough that she's getting memory leakage from previous versions of herself, understands the Eternals are helping kill everyone on Earth and wants to stop them. That'd be a pretty cool spin on the story if Mad Worry wasn't a lessening of sanity, but a sign of an Eternal waking up to the horrors they've been visiting on world after world. But there's no sign that the writers thought of it that way. It just feels weird and inconsistent, and like an excuse for some extra fight scenes. What? No, that was exactly... Wait, hold on. That'd be a pretty cool spin on the story if Mad Worry wasn't a lessening of sanity, but the sign of an Eternal waking up to the horrors they've been visiting on world after world. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. What do you think? It's not lessening insanity. Like, she's saying we're all gonna die. Yeah, we're all going to die. Like, that's not sanity. That's like a statement of like, okay, and now that we're awakening the celestial and the planet, the next step is that we're all going to die. It's not sanity. It's not a lessening of insanity. It's realizing it is literally waking up to the horrors of what they've been doing. Like, this person, like, Jesus Christ. Why is Athena so protective of her terrible memories? The cure for Mad Worry in the comics is to destroy the current Eternal and create a clean copy from a backup data, which does sound like something Mosley will resist. The film has a gentler version, suggesting that the Eternal spaceship has equipment that could reset Athena from scratch, solving the memory buildup problem and curing her. It's to the other Eternals' credits that they don't try to force Athena into the machine to reboot her, even though their best warrior repeatedly trying to murder them during battles is an immense threat, but it's pretty unclear why she resists rebooting so hard herself. Well, I mean, nobody, who would want to do that? I mean, I guess there's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind that kind of answers that question, but they have Batman and Superman on this world. I don't know if Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out. Eternals doesn't give us much information about Athena except that she's suffering from Mad Worry and suffering even more than the strain of holding it back and the fear of hurting a companion. She built her entire life around trying to stave off attacks of the disease, retreating to the desert and living a life of meditation, with Gilgamesh devoting his life to guarding her and taking her down. But the movie never actually addresses what in her past is so good that she's holding on to and afraid of losing it. Well, dude, it's a movie with 10 fucking characters in it, and that's juicy. That is juicy opportunities for an Angelina Jolie solo MCU movie. Why would they give you that? Come on, use your noggin here. Instead, she seems to be resisting memory solely in order to hold back. Yeah. No, dumb question. What are the deviants for in this version of the story? Oh, the Jack Kirby. In this manner, the dawn of ape became the common ancestors of three powerful new species: the deviant, an ever-changing and destructive failure. Structurally unstable, each new generation of deviant appeared in new and monstrous ways. His lot was constant war. The human! I love how many exclamation points those old comics have. This species bred with true balance of structure and disposition. Although he was a destroyer, the human was capable of building for peace. His kind was destined to inherit the earth he belonged to it. And the eternal. He was more a child of the gods than of earth. He reached for the universe. The Eternals bred few in numbers and were immune to time and death. Like the gods, they lived apart from all other living beings. Well, there you go. There you go. You have your deviant, you have your human, and you have your eternal. And somewhere in here, you have your offshot mutants. I don't know. Mutants probably kind of bend towards this direction more than this direction, but I don't know. You have also some mutants who classify as externals, and the externals are immortal. So the externals probably bend more towards this realm. I think Cannonball was an external. Am I correct in that? Let me check my work. They may have retconned that aspect of that character too. The boy High Lord, I think that's a reference to him being an external. There we go, power is external. It has been theorized that Cannonball may have been one of the externals and therefore immortal. That's right. Although it was questionable. So let's go with the externals. Yes, Apocalypse is an external. You know what? I don't like the Marvel Wikia because they don't give you the out-of-canon definition of an external. I want that. It's like going to that South Park town where everyone's in character. The externals are a group of fictional characters appearing in American comic books published by Marvel. Considered a rare subspecies of mutants, most of them were X-Men antagonists. The original unused name for the group was to be the Prophets, as seen as Sunspot and Gideon Trading. Okay. Background. The externals are all mutants with an additional gift of immortality, and, as expressed by Cable, they play an important role in the future of Apocalypse's rise to power. Their true origins are scattered throughout history, but it's known that they all share a psychic link with one another, which separates them from other immortals, as it allows them not only to sense each other and where, but allows them to summon each other at will from great distances. It also allows them to sense when one rises from the dead and when one is killed. Saul, Absalom, Gideon, Nicodemus, Burke, Selene, Kandra, and Cruel, to a lesser extent, formed the self-fashioned High Lords, bent on playing power games and manipulating events behind the scenes. Cruel was employed as an enforcer to assassinate other High Lords, while Kandra and Selene, okay, so blah, blah, blah. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any particular link between the externals and the eternals. They're just both groups of immortals. Interesting nonetheless. So yeah, if they're mutants, normal mutants kind of been this way. External mutants kind of been this way. But they're all humans. The cosmology around the deviants of Jack Kirby's original Eternals comics is fairly straightforward. Created by the same Celestials that created the Eternals, the deviants are humanoid, intelligent, tech, blah, blah, blah. Neil Gaiman's 2006 Eternals arc suggests a much darker purpose for the... Okay, hold on, let me get back up here. Developed from early humanoid stock and injected with an unstable gene to let them mutate in a wide range of ways, the deviants were expected to increase human potential by injecting more variety and thus survivability into humanity's genetic lines. Neil Gaiman's 2006 Eternals arc suggests a much darker purpose for the deviants. In that story, one deviant character, who refers to his shape-shifting brethren as the Changing People, explains how Celestials put the deviants on Earth to rapidly breed and multiply as a kind of harvest that the Celestials later returned to and feasted on. The souls of the Changing People are a delicacy for the Celestials, he snarls. In the movie, the deviants apparently have a completely different purpose, but if you blink at the beginning of the film, you'll miss it. They were meant to be a predator capable of wiping out all apex predators on Earth in order to give humanity more room to develop and grow without being devoured by megalodons or saber-toothed tigers or whatever else had hunger for them. It's unclear why the Celestials thought unleashing a race of giant, incredibly tough, shape-changing immortals onto the planet would help humanity not get eaten. And it's no wonder that the movie's secondary villain, Deviant Crow, voiced by Bill Skarsgård, resents the Celestials setting up his species to get slaughtered en masse. In this version of the story, at least, introducing Eternals to Earth seems to have been an environmental quick fix, like dumping a mongoose on Hawaii to control the rat population. Yeah, that was the explanation in the movie for the Deviants. It's a little weird. It is a little weird. It's weird that a Celestial, a cosmic entity of godlike status, would be like, well, let's put some mongooses there. Oh shit, the mongooses are out of control. Well, let's put some tigers there. Oh shit, the tigers are out of control now. Did Icarus fly Ajax all the way to Alaska, or did they take a plane? What? No, we're not going to go there. Will there be the Eternals 2? That's almost a given. In spite of Furpo's jokes about Eternals 2, it's unclear whether the Eternals will return their own standalone movie or whether they're being set up for a crossover with one of the more other Marvel arcs. Eternals is sets in motion in Phase 4. The movie does end with a cliffhanger for many characters, and Marvel Studios' dedication to revolving those kinds of dangling plots threads suggests there's more to come, but given the hints at the credit scene, that resolution may come in Guardians Volume 3. The Black Knight movie, currently not even announced, and I doubt there will be a Black Knight movie. It'll probably be a Disney Plus thing, if anything. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked what I said, what Justin said, if you like the content we're providing, if you had any kind of laughs at all, even if you hate us, if you hate my guts, if you want to stab me, if you want to say all sorts of horrible things to me, cool. Like the video, subscribe. You'll get fed all sorts of shit you'll probably hate. And if you like us, you'll get fed all sorts of shit you probably like. So please and thank you.